Q&A. For those of here in person, our bathrooms are down the hall to the left, just past some bookcases. And then we have the pastries and snacks this morning. Lunch will be brought in about noon. So as we've done in the past, we will draw a winner from all the surveys that are turned in and send $100 to their patient organization of choice. So you gotta be, you have to do the surveys to be eligible. Okay. Next thing. So before we get into the sponsors, so I want to let you guys know that we do have a YouTube where we try to drop our symposiums on. It's Haiti Symposium. We also have a website, Haiti, I think it's HaitiSymposiumKC.com. And so we appreciate you guys looking at that. Just referring others to it who couldn't make it today, that they can follow up there. Our gold sponsors this year are Higgins Brothers Surgery Center and Global Birthing Home Foundation again. Just want to lift up and thank all of our sponsors. Our silver sponsors this year were Hope for Caribbean Kids. So we appreciate you. And then our gold sponsor has been Glory House Services. So thank you guys very much. What we're gonna do is basically kind of on the schedule. I'm gonna introduce I'm gonna introduce both. No, I'm gonna introduce William to start with. He will do his presentation. And then we'll take a short 10-minute break and I'll introduce Peter and his presentations. And then we've got a little change in the agenda, but Jemima will explain that later. And then we'll probably try to do roundtable and lunch combined as much as we can. So we have to respect the church and be out of here close to 1 o'clock as we can. So appreciate it. So we connected with William O'Neill through many of you guys that are here have known him for a while, been participating with him in other networks. And so he's an expert on human rights. He served as advisors to the UN, and I will let him tell you more about him as we start his presentation. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. As was just said, I'm the UN independent expert on the human rights situation in Haiti. I've worked on Haiti, in and on Haiti over many years, and also worked in many other countries. It's in the bio. I won't bore you with that now, and time is precious. But I thought I would focus my remarks this morning on the human rights situation. I know a lot of you follow it already, so I won't go into great detail, but please ask any questions if I haven't covered something you'd like, or you're confused, or you disagree with something. That's fine. So let me just plunge in. The human rights situation is catastrophic. I use that word advisedly because I've seen many, many bad situations, but I think the situation right now in Haiti is among the very worst I've ever seen anywhere, and including comparing it to previous times in Haiti. My colleagues who are based in Haiti at the UN office there, it's BINU, the acronym in French, is the UN office in Haiti. There are about 10 people working in the human rights section who are fantastic, including several Haitian nationals and internationals who document, investigate, and it's not easy, as you all know already, to do anything really in Haiti these days, to move around, to talk to people. So many parts of the capital are off limits because of security concerns, and getting out of the city is not easy because all the roads are controlled by the gangs. So you have to go by air, essentially, the only safe way. And that means helicopter, and that doesn't, it's very expensive and it's not that frequent. So, needless to say, it's hard to get information and confirm it, but they are doing a fantastic job. And by every measure that matters, the numbers are bad and getting worse. So, just to cite a few, the number of killings by gangs has increased dramatically in the first half of this year. And now I think the last statistics are coming in towards the end of August. And they show a continuing increase in killings, overwhelmingly attributed to the gangs. Some are also very worrying extrajudicial executions by the Haitian National Police. And then there's some killings done by self-defense groups, the Bois Calais, or the vigilante organizations that have sprung up largely because the state has failed to protect the people. I'm not justifying what the self-defense groups are doing. I've talked to some people who are involved with them, and I've urged them to be careful and cautious, that they can't be judge, jury, and executioner. But I do understand why they're doing what they're doing. It's because the state is absent and is not protecting them. So kidnappings also increased quite a bit. This is over 100% by gangs. They kidnap people for various reasons, but mostly for money, to hold people for ransom as a revenue mechanism for them to earn money. Gender-based violence, which particularly here it's sexual violence, and victims are overwhelmingly women and young girls. Very, very worrying. For a while, it was hard to get statistics. It's not unusual in any country. It's not very reported. There's shame, there's fear, there's all kinds of reasons why people don't report these cases. And add to that in Haiti, just the difficulty of getting to either a police station or a medical facility or wherever it is that the victim might need to go to try to get some support and help and care. Nevertheless, my colleagues there again have done a fantastic job working again very closely with Haitian NGOs that are active in this area. And the numbers are very, very, very scary and increasing. And a particular element in the last report that the UN put out for the second quarter showed an increase in gang rapes, and the perpetrators are younger and younger. That's something I'll come back to, that about half of the members of gangs are minors, and the victims of these attacks are younger and younger. So again, when you think about Haiti's future and their youth, it's an incredibly traumatic period to be a child in Haiti, not only for this reason of possibly being the victim of a sexual assault if you're a girl or a young woman, but also you're witnessing horrible things. You're witnessing murders, you're witnessing or hearing gunfire. Your friends or family are terrified because of an attack or a threat of an attack. And that leads to the third or the fourth area I want to mention with human rights consideration is displacement. And there are now more than 1.3 million Haitians who've been forced to flee their homes, again, overwhelmingly due to the gang violence. That's the highest percentage as a population of any country in the world. Haiti has a population, again, no one really knows, but let's say 11 million. That's a very high percentage of people who are not living at home, and the conditions where they do live are horrific. The state, again, has very little capacity or resources to provide any kind of support to people who have been forced to flee. So that means they're living in parks, in public, in churches, or also many schools. This has become a really complicated factor because there are many, many schools that can no longer function as schools because they have become internally displaced persons camps. Why schools? Schools usually, even the poor ones, have a wall, a door, a roof. Some of them may even have running water and toilets. And so that looks pretty good when you've been forced to flee your home and the option is on the street or in a park. So the problem, though, that is that the schools can't function as schools. I visited a couple of these sites. One was in a church complex. The pastor was a Protestant congregation. He was very generous and welcomed about 1,000 people into his complex. But they're living under tarps with, I think, one or two functioning toilets for 1,000 people, no shower, and no regular access to food. I interviewed two young girls. One hadn't been to school in 2 years. Another was about 7, had never gotten to start school. And this is quite common among the displaced. Again, about half of the displaced, so let's say 650,000, 700,000 or so are children. The other issues that I take on in my mandate, in addition to the horrible ones of killings, kidnappings, rape, is the access. I've made a priority to look at the access to healthcare and access to education. And I know your organizations are part of your coalition here. I'm talking frequently, exchanging information with Ted Higgins and Jim Grant and other parts of the Haiti Health Network who've been enormously helpful to me because of their presence on the ground and providing me their insights and their information has been incredibly invaluable. But I know firsthand from them just how hard it is for them to function. And they are outside of Port-au-Prince, which, believe it or not, is an advantage these days, because at least for depending where you are, getting supplies in from the Dominican Republic is dicey. It changes, but at least it's possible. And when it works, it works well, and you don't have to pay off the gangs, which is what you have to do if you're trying to get any medical supplies out of the capital, because the gangs control the port. They control all the main roads in and out of the capital, north, south, and east. They control the bay with boats, so moving things by water is not easy, and you're very high risk of let's say you're trying to move something by boat. The boat will get hijacked just as the vehicles do on the road, and they'll be forced to pay a tax, quote unquote, or they'll be subject to having what they're trying to bring stolen, and worse, killing, kidnapping, or raping. So it's really a challenge for healthcare facilities to operate. There's been a brain drain. I don't blame them. Many medical professionals have left Haiti. Now it's much harder to leave because of the restrictive policies enacted by the Trump administration, also by the Dominican Republic, the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos. Everywhere is kind of trying to close their doors to Haitians. And also, it's just so expensive to get supplies, medicines, anything you need, electricity, generator, fuel for your generator. It's really challenging. Education also, as I mentioned already, you have a lot of schools in the Port-au-Prince area that are now displacement camps. But even in other parts of the area, it's often too dangerous. It's too dangerous to send children to school. They might not come back home. Teachers also are taking great risks. The school year opening already has been delayed yet again until now early October. Cross your fingers that actually is respected, that date. One of my Haitian friends who's an educator said, there has not been a complete school year in Haiti in 7 years. It goes back to, do the math, 2018, 2019, the Pays Loc, when the city, Port-au-Prince, was largely blocked and no one was moving, lots of violence and massacres. Then you had COVID kick in, and then you had, in the middle of that, the presidential assassination in 2021, and the last 4 years of the horror of the violence. So for most children, that's even true outside of Port-au-Prince. The violence affects areas far away. I've been to the south and the north on my visits in the past. And because of the shortages of everything, the expense, and also the flow of people to the north and the south, it's put a huge burden on healthcare facilities and schools. There's a priest I know, an Anglican priest in Hesh, who has a school that normally has about 1,000 students, but he now is up to 1,200. and the extra 200 are all from gang-controlled areas in Port-au-Prince. And he doesn't have more teachers or more classrooms or more food or more anything, but he's taken in these extra 200, but it's a real burden. And same thing in the South. When I was in Les Cayes and in Jérémie, I heard the same stories from educators and healthcare facilities that they were already really stretched, but now they're even more stretched with the flow of displaced people fleeing the capital region to escape the violence. I just want to take a couple minutes more because this is maybe something you don't know a lot about, or because I don't either. It changes every day. But you might have seen about 2 weeks ago, the United States presented a new resolution for the Security Council to consider that would create a new international force in Haiti to replace the current one led by Kenya, which I don't blame them. They have never had what they need to succeed. They're not even half of the allocated staff they were supposed to have. They don't have the right equipment. They don't have helicopters. They don't have enough of anything. So they have not really made a difference. They've helped here and there. They're supporting the Haitian National Police, which is already also very, very thinly staffed or very low numbers, and not enough of anything. And they have had small victories here or there against gangs, but nothing to really change the overall dynamic or momentum. So now the US has proposed a force much larger. This force was supposed to have 2,500. It barely got to 1,000. The new force, if it ever comes to be, will supposed to have 5,500, and it'll have much more robust mandate to take initiative on its own against the gangs. It should have air assets, marine assets, and more firepower, literally, than the current one. We'll see if that ever comes to pass. The Security Council politics are very complicated. Russia and China are not thrilled with this idea, and it's not clear whether they could veto the resolution, or they would, or they can, but whether they will or not, we don't know. The negotiations, I'm told, are very heated among the member states. And then there's also the question of, even if it does pass, where's the money going to come from, and where are the people going to come from? Because up till now, there, as I said, the current MSS force has not even had half of what it's supposed to have. It's been a real struggle to raise money and resources and people. And the Trump administration has made it very clear that they are not willing to take the burden of paying for this or most of this. So I don't see other countries jumping up and down saying, "Oh yeah, we'll send millions and millions of dollars." So I don't know. We'll see. I think that we'll have to know, because October 2nd is the date that the current Kenyan-led force's mandate ends. So something has to be decided between now and October 2nd, which is barely 2 weeks away, on what to do. So keep your eyes out. There'll be stories in the press. We'll see what the outcome may be. But I have to say, I don't want to end on I always say Haiti is dire, but not hopeless. I think it's a situation that can be resolved. There are groups like all of yours that are engaged with Haitian counterparts who do miracles every day. I'm totally astonished and in awe of everything that these groups do, despite all the hardships I just described. So I just think it would just take a little something to push the politicians to do what's the right thing to do, to build some momentum, to show the gangs they can't run roughshod over the country, that they are going to face opposition that's serious, because the gangs have no support. The people hate them. So, and if you could cut off, I'll end with this, because it concerns all of us, certainly in the United States. We really have to do much more to stop the flow of guns and ammunition to the gangs, which comes overwhelmingly from the United States, and especially the state of Florida. So I urge you all, I know some of you probably already have been active in this, in letters, Congress, senators, whoever it is, to push for this. This is something that should not be a partisan issue. It's something, if you want to dismantle the gangs, the easiest and safest way for you as an opponent of the gangs is literally to stop them. If they run out of bullets, they're finished. It's over. So I think we just have to keep pushing for that. But I'll stop there and hope to answer any questions or hear your comments. But thank you.
Hi, Bill. It's Jim Grant, Global Birthing Home Foundation. I was just wondering if, in the event that the gang suppression force plan does not pass through the Security Council, what is the possibility maybe of a swivel to focusing on just getting more relief aid into Haiti? The United Nations is doing what they can, but I know their funds are very limited. Maybe some of the countries, if they could pass this motion, would be more willing to contribute to that as opposed to another military operation.
Sure. Would you like me to answer that? I'll take it right now.
Yes.
Okay. It's hard to know. I think one of the discouraging realities right now is that the humanitarian United Nations humanitarian appeal for Haiti is at about 11%, 11%. That's historically really low. I mean, they never get to the full number, but it's usually around 50%, 45. This is really low, and it's very discouraging. And I think that just reflects an international, whatever it is, lack of funds, having to choose in some European countries, it seems, between armaments to deal with Russia and Ukraine and that threat over humanitarian funds for other countries. You have other competition with Gaza, with Ukraine, with Syria, with Sudan. There's so many catastrophes. I don't know if there would be a surge of money that would be dedicated to fund the crying humanitarian need in Haiti. And then the other question would be the logistics. Without security, how do you get it to where it needs to go? And that's for me a really big problem. We keep saying security, 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 because you can't do anything if the gangs still control to such an extent the capital and its outer area of the region, and then also the central plateau. And they're spreading a little bit now. There was a terrible massacre just on Thursday of at least 40 people in a little town near Akahai, just north of the capital on your way up on the coastal road towards San Marc and Gonaive. And that was involved, it appears, a gang just lashing out. I think their leader was killed in a shootout with the police, and the gang just took it out on the population because they know the population hates them. And they probably were and they may have been right, although it doesn't obviously justify what they did. The population was helping the police or supporting the police in that battle with the gang leader. So, I don't know. I just don't know. I don't think you can really get at this humanitarian situation until you get some control over the security. And so I don't know. We'll see what this resolution leads to. I mean, the Russians and Chinese might not veto, they might just abstain. And then we would still, that would be good in my view, but then we'd still need to find the money and people to really to find the personnel and equipment for that force. The Kenyans would stay on, and that, I mean, the others, there's also Salvadorans, Guatemalans, Bahamians. So the 1,000 you have could stay, and they would just change their hats or change the name of the acronym. So at least you'd have a start. You have the bases that have been built. There's the main base, and there are 3 forward operating bases, so they could still function. So you wouldn't be starting from zero, and that's good.
With respect to the logistics of providing aid, as you mentioned, the South and the North and the far Southeast, they're all cut off from Port-au-Prince by roadway, by seaway. Air traffic can still get into the South through the airport in Kai, which has been newly expanded, do you think that perhaps there could be more focus getting aid there by air? Because as I understand it, small jets can fly there now. But there's very little aid actually getting to the south because there's no seaport for ships to go to. And of course, no road traffic.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this with UN people to try to encourage them to take a possible new approach, looking at squeezing the gangs from the outside and not just coming at them from within the safe areas of Port-au-Prince where they are, and then trying to move out. And the Lake Hai airstrip, I mean, is there? I was there in what was about a year ago, and it's been extended. Now it's could be international. They want to make it an international airport at some point, and they even have flights from Miami. You have Cape Haitian, which is already and gets lots of flights in, and you could use those two as your air north and south, and then move to the extent you can from both those cities out to other areas in both the northern, the Grand Nord, as they call it, and the Grand Sud. And Jacmel also now, I've been told the UN has started an air corridor from Jacmel to bring in and people in and out. Because for now, the only way in or out, I mean, the last time I went was in March, and I had to take the helicopter from Cape Haitian to the Hotel Caribe. You land in a field behind the hotel because they don't, go into the airport downtown. And now I'm told there's another kind of link between Jacmel and I don't know whether it's also the airport in Port-au-Prince or this field in Juvenat up near Pétionville. But I think there'd be some potential there. I don't know about the south, the Saint Louis du Sud, this new private port that was supposed to just open. I don't know if that could be used. Miraguan is open and gets a lot of, actually when they can, they get these barges come out from Port-au-Prince with trucks on them, and they deliver fuel and other things. So, I mean, there would be ways to do it, but it's cumbersome and expensive.
I understand that most of the arms come from the United States. What is really the root problem there from the United States point of view of stopping the arms flowing into Haiti?
The root problem is a lack of political will, to put it bluntly, on the part of both Biden. Here I blame everybody. The Biden administration was very lax on this. And actually, the Trump administration has shown a little more energy on trying to increase. I've been saying for over 2 years, and not just me, many people, 2.5 years, 3 years, to get Homeland Security much more engaged in inspecting the containers that are leaving the port of Miami, especially the Miami River, where all the boats, everybody knows where these little freighters leave to go to Haiti from Miami. It's not a secret. And then the same thing in Port Everglades, or there's somewhere near Fort Lauderdale where they also are using, and a little bit less from New Orleans, but that's also doable. So there was always resistance. I think there's Second Amendment issues with Florida and gun right to own gun. You get into that internal issue, which is even probably more explosive now, given what just happened here last week. But there's a reluctance, and one of the Homeland Security people, it was interesting. He said, I think it's true, but it certainly could be overcome. He said, look, our culture is meant on keeping things out, people and things out of the United States. We're not so much focused on what's leaving the United States to go somewhere else. And, that could be true, but certainly could be fixed. You could just say, okay, now we are going to look and we're going to tighten. There was a rule that allowed, if you declared goods that were less than $2,000, you didn't have to fill out a manifest. So of course, that was a huge loophole. A lot of people used to hide and disassemble guns or boxes of bullets and claim it was under $2,000. They didn't have to list anything. They've tightened up on that, which is good. They've also arrested and actually they got 2 prosecutions going, or 1 prosecution, and 1 guy pled guilty on arms traffickers in Florida. And that sends a very strong signal. You could end up 20 years to life. Do you really want to take a risk on the profit you're making on this, which isn't that big when you think about Haiti? It's not this huge volume. So you want to risk 20 years to life in prison to make whatever X amount of money? That may make people think twice. So I think a combination of increased inspections, increased prosecutions, and increasing or closing loopholes on the requirements when you're filling out the forms to send whatever it is to Haiti could have a big impact. And then just raising public awareness about this, that it's an outrage that the gangs, 90 to 95% of their weaponry and ammunition comes from the United States.
Thank you.
I wanted to speak to the fact that you mentioned that a lot of the gang members are young people. And the people that we work with in Haiti say that the young people have a choice of joining the gangs or forfeiting their safety. And so I don't know how we reach that, but I also wanted to ask about why there's not more effort that I can see of empowering the people. I know that we're going to hear from the Ted Higgins Center later, but they have armed guards that have been able to protect their facility, and they've been able to do building projects. They've been able to, and they have not been overcome by gangs. So is there some problem that the United States or the UN are not willing to empower the people and train people there to protect themselves? They have the language, they have the need, they have the desire to be out of this trouble if they could have the, the means, the training, the weapons, whatever is required to protect themselves. Is there some problem with why we're not able to do that?
Thank you. Yeah, no, two great questions. I'll take real briefly on the first one, part of it. Yes, I visit prisons when I go to Haiti. That's always a very depressing situation. They're overcrowded, filthy, and people actually die of hunger in Haitian prisons. But I went to the prison in Port-au-Prince that also has youth, and it's supposed to be just for youth. But the problem now is it's got adults, males, females, and it's all mixed, and it violates every standard of international human rights when it comes to detention. But I did interview three young boys who had been in a gang, and they all had pretty much the same story, that it was more survival. The one boy was a street child who had been abandoned by his family, was living by his wits on the street, begging, stealing, washing windshields, whatever it was. And the gangs noticed him at one point and said, "Hey, you want to make some money? You want a hot meal every day?" And he said, "Yeah, that sounds good." And so they said, "Okay, you're going to be a lookout, and you're going to tell us, is there a police car coming or somebody suspicious, and you're going to go into this, you're going to stay there, and then you're going to go every so often and talk to this person and report what you see." And he did that, and he got a hot meal every day. He got like $5 or $6 a week, which to him was a small fortune. And the two other boys had similar stories. They had no options, no school, no education, no job prospects. And then in some cases, they join because they're threatened. I think that's what you were alluding to. Some are told, join, or we rape your sister, or we do something bad to you. And so, yes, it's a huge challenge what to do with these young people someday. Let's hope when this all ends. And there's a big, important, there's an awareness, and I think there's going to be, I hope, resources that these young people are not going to go out to prison, but they're going to try to be rehabilitated. And this is not something brand new. They're really like child soldiers. And so we have I've worked in Nepal and Sierra Leone and South Sudan, where they have a huge issue of child soldiers. And the UN has this experience. There are Haitians who know about this and care about it that will take the lead, I hope, with support, again, from where the money's going to come from, let's see, that will help to rehabilitate these young people. And they're, as I said, about half the gang members, UNICEF estimates, are minors. The second part of your question is also good and hard. It's hard to generalize. I mean, I've talked to Ted a lot about his approach, and it's worked up there. There are some unique circumstances in a way that he's there. The Higgins Center is near the Dominican border, which, as I said, is a huge advantage most of the time for getting what the center needs, people and supplies. The gangs, there are strong gangs, but they're not that close. They're close. Nobody wants them anywhere near them, but they're a bit away. And the center has had the resources to hire some, I believe they're ex-Haitian police and people with military training, and it's not cheap. But together with the Haitian National Police and some of the local efforts, they've been able to hold off the gangs for now, and I hope forever. But other places are not as well placed and don't have the resources. There is, I didn't mention this, and maybe Peter will go into this more. There are private security firms now in Haiti. Eric Prince, the former Blackwater guy from Iraq, and others that are bringing in drones and sophisticated weaponry. They are not cheap either. And the government has some kind of, we've never seen the contract. Nobody knows exactly what the deal is. So that element has now been added to the scene. I think the Bois Calais groups I mentioned earlier, these self-defense vigilante groups, have had some success, and a lot of them are actually staffed by current Haitian National Police off duty or former Haitian National Police. And they have had some success, but there is a danger in that they are really unaccountable. And they have made mistakes. They've killed people who they thought were gang members who are not. And it's immediate rough justice. It's executed right on the spot, burn the body, and that's it. So I think there could be a way, we've discussed this, how to engage I know there's another healthcare organizations in the South that have managed, again, the gangs aren't that close, so they do have that really breathing space where they have a good working relationship with the Haitian National Police who are assigned to their area. They have their own Haitian private security who have some training and experience. And they also have developed programs such as giving the Haitian National Police who are stationed there, feeding them, providing them food, providing them free medical care from the medical center. Mechanics will fix their vehicles, which break down a lot, for free. So there are those efforts that are occurring in other parts of the country that are not totally under the gang control that are working for now, and I hope forever. But it's much more difficult when you're in Port-au-Prince or in the Artibonite Artibonite Valley area, where you have very strong, big, powerful gangs that just have too much firepower. As I said, just this Arcahai massacre the other day, 2 days ago, there was somewhat of success. The police held off this gang trying to come into a new area, killed the leader, but then the reprisal was fierce. Over 40 people killed by the gang the next day. So that's a harder one, I think, to solve just from local resources, where the weapons come from. Again, those weapons are illegal there too. Haiti has gun laws that are much stricter than ours, but they're never enforced. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't be thinking really creatively about how to supplement the Haitian National Police, how to maybe get Haitian private security firms, other groups that are organizing, get them more of what they need, but also try to impress upon them the need to be careful and not literally always just take that entire law into their own hands, because that doesn't end well. And in fact, some of these self-defense groups start acting like gangs. They become a gang. They control access. They want money if you come past their checkpoint. It's really hard to tell them the difference between them and a gang.
Sean Miller with Homes from the Heart. And you guys may know a lot more about this, but Bill, can you comment on the current state of the government? And then if, say the UN authorizes this, you have 5,500 troops go in there, they get everything cleaned up. Is there a plan on who control, because it always seems like there's a vacuum that exists and then you're right back where you started in Haiti. Is there any kind of long-term thinking on what it looks like after things are stabilized?
Thank you. Yes, the day after, we talk about the day after in Gaza, which now isn't looking very good at all. The day after, I've often talked about the day after in Port-au-Prince. What does that look like? And I have to say, although if you look at the area that the gangs have taken over, they destroyed everything. It's just like a scorched earth. So it's going to take a huge amount of, again, this is where I worry about where the money's going to come from. It can't only come from within Haiti, although there is money in Haiti. It's surprising, there are revenues raised, there are taxes collected. The problem is corruption. It's a huge, huge problem. It's nothing new, but there's going to be a massive need to rebuild more than the earthquake. Even it's been more destructive than the earthquake. And we saw what happened with that, and all the corruption and the money that got wasted and lost. And unfortunately, the current government is not one that brings you a lot of hope or confidence. It's also got there's 7 people on this presidential council. 3 of them accused serious allegations of corruption while they're on the council, not from before. And they won't resign, and they tried to get them to resign, but they wouldn't. You have a prime minister and his ministries, ministers and the ministries. It's not very reassuring. There's just not that leadership drive that we would like to see among the political class. And I don't have the answer to that other than just try to get young people in there and give them a chance, because the current political class in Haiti is not what you'd like. But the planning, who knows, this current arrangement is supposed to end on February 7th next year. And there's supposed to be elections between now and then, and a constitutional reform referendum between now and then. And I can't see any of that happening. So what happens on February 7th when these 7 people, their mandate ends? Who's in charge? And they're already discussing that. Believe me, there are big discussions in Haiti about not waiting until February 6th to figure something out. They're trying to figure that out now, because I think people realize that timetable is not going to be respected. So are they going to move? There's talk about having a smaller group of people. This is so unwieldy with 7. It's crazy. So maybe having one judge from the Supreme Court, or a Conseil des Sages, like a wise person's 2 or 3 technical people, not politicians, who would then take over and then try to arrange for elections. But you come back to the security situation. Unless you have security, how can you possibly have elections when over half the electorate is under the control of gangs? About 5.5 million, whatever's left in Port-au-Prince and the surrounding area, plus the Artibonite Valley. How are you going to have rallies, polling places, politicians making speeches? I mean, it's just unrealistic. So, and February 7th is really soon. I mean, we'll have to see, but that's a big worry, because people do I've said, and others many times too, the second it's safe to get into these gang-controlled areas, you've got to flood it with jobs, with schools, healthcare centers, rebuilding roads, toilets, clean water. It's all going to be urgent and an emergency phase, but that's going to cost money, and I don't know. But the appeal at 11%, that's not encouraging at all. But maybe once it gets safe and you can show results, maybe people will then open their pocketbooks a little more readily. But it's going to be, because otherwise, even if you take care, quote unquote, of the situation kinetically, unless you address that deep problem of inequality, deep poverty, lack of opportunity, the gangs will spring right back up. And we'll be doing the same thing in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
Are there any questions online?
Thank you, Bill. It's not always, it's not an encouraging landscape that we're facing, but we appreciate all the NGOs that are represented here, but can you give us a little insight of what roles NGO can play in this?
Well, NGOs are vital. I mean, this is again one of the dilemmas and paradoxes of Haiti. It's sometimes called the Republic of NGOs. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, because there are so many, because the state doesn't fulfill its basic responsibilities. And that's nothing new. It's a question of degree rather, or that kind, I think. Now it's at a degree that's unprecedented. So maybe it is verging on changing in kind, that there's such a void, and that NGOs are filling that void in education, in healthcare, in clean water, food. I haven't talked about food. Half of Haiti is food. There are levels of malnutrition and in some areas famine in Haiti. So the access to food and nutrition is also, whatever's being done is overwhelmingly being done by NGOs. So your roles are all more vital than ever. And you're the ones who are the heroes. And I'm just saying that because you're here, but I say that everywhere I can. But at some point, it's not healthy. It's not sustainable to have a country that is so dependent on civil society, on the nonprofit sector. It should be supplementing the state where the state needs a little bit here or there or whatever, and not replacing the state. And the problem in Haiti for all too long is that because the state, one of my Haitian friends has he says it's not so much a failed state. He calls it an état fantôme, which is a phantom state. It's not really there, especially out in the countryside. You can go miles and miles and not see a public school or a public clinic or whatever, but you'll see a private school, you'll see a private clinic, you'll see whatever. But so I think there's no getting around that. You can't let the perfect defeat the good, and so there's going to be a need for NGOs for the foreseeable future. I just hope the NGOs can coordinate and collaborate in ways so that there's not duplication or waste or somebody's left out because they got overlooked. But I think certainly for the near term, medium term, the NGOs are still going to be doing most of the legwork when it comes to these core issues of education, food, water, shelter, healthcare. I don't see any way around it. And the UN agencies, I should add, they also, and the European Union, so some of we don't have USAID anymore, essentially. They're gone. So that's also a scary, one priest I work with closely, who's also a medical doctor, an American, he told me this was when I was there in March, he had to sell a pickup truck to buy the drugs for his HIV/AIDS patients that he normally would have gotten from AID. But AID had stopped, the funding ended, he had to get the medicine. The only way he could get it was by raising money, so he sold the pickup truck, but he can't do that every month. So that's dire. It is dire, yeah. But you know that, and I know you know that, but I think it's just to urge you to hang in there. It's not hopeless, as I keep saying. I do think it can be turned around. I don't think it would take a lot to turn it around. And then I think once the momentum got going in a positive way, then you'd have more and more people really ready to pitch in even more so than they are now. Maybe I'm delusional. I've been accused of that before. I guess I would be doing rights work if I wasn't somewhat delusional, but I do think it's true. I think in this case, in Haiti's case, it's not Sudan, it's not Gaza, it's not Ukraine. And those, I throw up my hands when I see those situations, but not Haiti. I really do think it's something we can help Haitians fix.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your knowledge with us. And we truly appreciate it. We are going to take a 10-minute break and come back at 10:35 for Peter Morton's presentation. So get yourself coffee, drinks, bathroom break, whatever you need. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Continue on with our next presentation. So I want to introduce to you Peter Morton from Morton Security. He's been gracious enough to lend his time and also provide our next presentation. So Peter, I'll let you do any more introduction you want, and thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Bill actually stole a lot of my thunder, so I'm gonna have to figure out what to speak about. But there's quite a bit in there that coincides with the actual security support situation there with the group. But let me introduce myself real quick, if you don't mind. Do I control slides or just say next slide? Find it.
Just tell me you need the next one.
Let's go to the next one. Just a little background on myself. I am a former U.S. Army intelligence officer who's operated with the government for 16 years, and then with commercial organizations with Amazon and JP Morgan, and then ending up as a consultant, mostly out of necessity because of all the requests I was getting from different NGOs and faith-based groups that just needed support. And so I've been doing this for about 22 years, 23 years or so. I think I've been in almost every conflict since 2001 in some way or another. I joined the Army 4 months before 9/11. It was perfect timing and went straight to Afghanistan. Got a eye-opening experience there as to what it's like for a lot of people around the world in developing nations. And so about 5 years ago, I was asked by an organization called Life Song for Haiti with Tim Tebow Foundation. They're in Cabaret, which is exactly the location where that massacre just happened recently. And went in to do a security assessment, and that just led to a lot of, first off, within myself, I'd heard about Haiti, but I just hadn't really been involved too much. And going down there, meeting the people, just really opened my eyes to the fact that I'm kind of like Bill on this. There's definitely hope and the capacity for them to successfully navigate through this and get to a stable point. I have 100% faith in that. And that's after seeing a lot of different conflict zones and areas. I spent 6 months in Ukraine as well, and been in Israel during that whole thing. And it's spent a lot of time in Afghanistan. A lot of my experience comes out of that. But with Haiti, there is the potential because of the amount of support they have. I think based on proximity, probably to the United States and Western countries. And so I do have hope for them. I've worked a lot with numerous organizations on the ground in different capacities. Those 3 pictures kind of represent everything that I've done. And so what I'd like to do is based off my experience there, we do a lot of, like I said, intimate, I would say, operations, do a lot of the kidnap, retrieval, recovery, things like that, that go on down there. Prepare a lot of the organizations. Working with Lifezone was great. We were able to prepare them for what we saw coming over those few years, and we were able to evacuate 250 kids that were under threat on the run to Cap Haitians successfully and safely, and then reopen the school as well afterwards because of the planning and preparation that went into that, because of having a good security team on site that was trained and understood the law and compliance. And I do believe that, and we've used that model in multiple organizations throughout the country, and it has worked well. So I do, like I said, have hope. It is dire. The situation is dire for sure. It's the worst I've ever seen it as well. When I talk about Haiti, I always kind of equate it to hitting rock bottom and then getting a jackhammer out and starting to continue to go down. And it's not meant to be funny. That's just how I envision it. It's just you always think, oh, there's no way it could get worse, and it continues to. So with that being said, what I'd like to do is give you it's almost a military style threat brief. Bill talked about the humanitarian side of things and the rights issues. I want to go into a little bit about the MSS itself and some of the gangs, and what they're doing down there, how they're operating, and then some predictive analysis on what I think is likely going to happen within the next 6 months to a year, surrounding that actual threat on the ground and how to mitigate it. So you can go to the next slide. I appreciate that. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Uh-oh, I lost the presentation, or did I lose the presentation? Up
No,
there.
I did.
All right. So the bottom line up front, the summary of what I'm going to talk about. I'm pretty sure everybody's familiar with the MSS, what it is, but it's a Kenyan-led multinational security support mission, is deployed to fight gang control in Port-au-Prince, mainly. But it's faced a lot of challenges from limited resource and personnel. The gangs dominate Port-au-Prince. They use militia-like tactics. I actually even hate the fact that we've termed these organizations gangs, because they are militia. There's no difference between them and the militias in other countries that I've been to. So I'm not sure why they continue to call them gangs, but they're essentially militias, that are looking to control territory, of course. But they use tactics like kidnapping, territorial control, and raids, organized crime, and they're trying to. Their version of territorial control expands. Some of them expands to actually the entire country. We want to control the country. We want to run this. In some people's minds, I've had conversations with certain individuals down there that is their thinking. They think they can do a better job than the government, and they think they're the hero stepping in to save the day. And of course, that's very dangerous when those people have a dictatorial mindset and want to use nefarious tactics to make that happen. They're likely to maintain tactical gains in the short term. They've had quite a few in the past, very low level, criminals that they've taken off the streets, seizing some weaponry, liberating some infrastructure like telecommunications from the gang control. But they're going to struggle to have any kind of lasting control without more resources, just like Bill was saying. And humanitarian displacement and protection risks are going to remain severe, if not increase. Without significant investment in rebuilding these institutions, the situation it could get worse. I mean, essentially, it's not inconceivable to actually see some of these gangs, some of these coalitions they built 100% completely taking over. And I know that sounds horrible and dire and everything, but you have to go into this with that mindset, because I think in the past, people haven't been willing to take on that mindset in order to address the actual threats or acknowledge the threats that really exist. And you have to be realistic about the situation and how dire it actually is in order to identify threats and mitigate them. So that's the summary of what I'm going to talk about. Next slide, please. The background, if you don't know, the MSS is, the Multinational Security Support Mission. It's led by Kenyans, with the Haitian National Police. It operates under a UN endorsed framework, but it's not a traditional UN peacekeeping operation. I believe, and Bill can correct me if I'm wrong, that was because of historical situations with peacekeeping operations in the past that just were not successful or viewed in a positive manner. The deployment started in 2024. Should have started earlier. It took quite a while to get this thing not just approved. And of course, the Kenyan side of the approval was what was holding a lot of this up, which essentially I think had to do with money. But they did deploy in mid 2024. The mandate, what their mission is to suppress gang violence, enable humanitarian access, and support stabilization of key infrastructure institutions. Everything is politically sensitive. Like you're saying, they're supposed to be having elections in a year, which is not likely going to happen. The people who are politically, in charge right now want to see those successes, but it's just not realistic, unfortunately. I think it'll take a little bit longer to get there, but that is their mandate. Next slide. this is kind of a depiction. It comes from small war journals, but it's a good depiction of how much territory these gangs actually control compared to what the MSS actually controls. There's a lot of different maps out there. They change daily, so it's hard to get the most accurate. But this is as close as I could get currently. But it does just kind of show you there's a lot of territory, and when you look at those territories, those are actually 100% controlled. There's no, we control this street or this street. It's that whole territory that is controlled. You're not going in and out there typically without paying a fee, right? And then the MSS isn't really going in there and doing what we call clearing, holding, and then building that area. They might go in to do a small operation, but typically they're just undermanned and they can't handle it. So they're focusing on the areas they can in order to allow humanitarian aid to come in. But one of the things you learn being in the military as an intelligence officer is stability operations. And just like Bill was saying, the number one thing you have to have before you can do anything is security. And that means you have to be, when I say security, that's not just clearing out bad guys, it's clearing out and then holding a territory for a long enough period, and then having a plan to hold it indefinitely in order for anything to grow. You can't clear out an area, put security guards around it, put a school in, and then leave, because that area is just going to get overrun again. We've seen it happen over and over in countries all over the world. The number one thing they teach you in stability ops is you have to have security before you can do anything else. Our special forces do stability ops. They send in an A team. The A team's number one objective is to do security, but they have a bunch of other jobs too. They help support the infrastructure, building of it, the political aspect of things, making sure the candidates running for office have good security and everything else. But the number one thing they have to have is security. And that's the one thing that Haiti does not have right now at all. And so I just kind of wanted to show you a little bit of the situation there, what you're dealing with. That map, of course, extends out. You have a lot of different gangs, like you said, the vigilante groups, the defense, groups that are being born out of necessity. We had to deal a lot with that I was in Bercy a lot, which is above Cabaret. And we had a group of people there that protected our facility there, which was a large facility. They, of course, did extort people coming through and charge tolls because they're voluntarily there and they felt like they should get paid. But it wasn't, of course, as bad as what the gangs were trying to do. And they did keep the gangs from overrunning the area. So it's really a hard balancing act for these orgs. And they do start, I don't know if it's a cultural thing or a mentality, but they do start adopting some of the same characteristics a lot of times that the gangs are showing. But typically that comes out of just desperation, that lower level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you're trying to feed your kids, you're trying to eat that day. You don't plan strategically. It's 24 hours every day. How do I live? And so a lot of people are doing whatever they have to do. That goes for the same increase that you're seeing in the recruitment of children into these. A lot of it's forced, but a lot of it's just desperation. It's like, okay, these guys are offering me food and water and shelter. I'll go work for them. And the parents being, hey, now we have one less mouth to feed, go. And so it's a very difficult situation to deal with, but that is the best map I can find of the controlled areas that are is accurate right now. You can go to the next slide. The situation. MSS is a good idea. They had a good plan, and they have essentially not really followed the plan since it was put into place. They have not met the numbers that they promised they would have. That I think that's based off of the ambiguity of when money's coming in, who's actually going to be paying for all of this. I'm sure the Kenyan government's not going to send more troops and start rotating out if they don't think that the stakeholders in this are going to be continuing to provide the funding for it. And so you have a lot of shortfalls when it comes to personnel. There should be a lot more than 991 people on the ground and doing this work. And then the amount of police that they actually have available is extremely, percentage wise, it's ridiculously small. It's not enough. So you have a big problem with that. It doesn't promote the feeling of we are here to enforce the law and we are the law and you need to do what we say. So the gangs aren't going to take it seriously. It doesn't show, it's not a show of force. It's a show of weakness, essentially. You can't follow through with your plans that you put into place in the first place. We're winning is the mentality that takes place here. So until they actually start fulfilling that, it's likely not going to get any better. It'll probably keep getting worse. The numbers there, in 2024, 5,601 people, which was a huge increase up from 2023. More than 4,000 of those have happened since the deployment of the MSS. Now, realistically, anytime you insert a force from the outside to try and disrupt criminal operations, there's going to be an escalation. There's going to be casualties. Actually, the military measures effectiveness often by their own casualties. It's a horrible metric, but this is the reality of the situation, right? So there's going to be more casualties every time you introduce something new like that. It's a guarantee. However, there's a significant amount of casualties here. And so it's not being effective. That being said, we are all wanting an immediate result here as well. That's not likely going to happen. It takes years. And so we need to be prepared for the long haul. Can you go to the next one? The humanitarian impact, Bill went through a lot of that, but it's essentially the same thing he said. Large scale displacement, especially with people being repatriated and having to come back into the country from the Dominican Republic, from the United States. That means more people that are without homes, because once you leave, especially if you don't have family connections or whatever, you're out. So there's going to be a lot more displacement. And then with the gang activity, it doesn't help anything. Civilian casualties are increasing. A lot of what we call collateral damage. I hate that term, but it's just victimization of innocent people who are in the wrong place at the wrong time, as well as people being victimized and targeted by these gangs. So there is a huge impact. Medical treatment is not easy to get to or accessible. So, a simple wound can turn into a deadly situation real quick. Clean water, clean food, all of it. It's just really restricted right now. It's hard to move. There's very few routes available in Haiti that you can actually take to go from one region to the next. There's no way to import anything. We saw this when we got to the point where we had to get cash from Port-au-Prince up to Bercy, and it was with a different organization. But we got to the point where we were putting bundles of cash in a plane, flying it up and throwing it out the window onto campus, just to get creative we had to get them cash somehow, right? That was a couple of years ago. And so it's way worse than it was before. External support in geopolitics, the donor pledges are there. They're still there, but we've had a lot of change in regimes. There's going to continue to be changes. And so I think that's where the ambiguity of what's actually going to happen here, are they going to fulfill, is kind of up in the air. I do think Rubio is a good choice for state. Coming from a migrant family, Cuba, same area. He already kind of supported, he's been to Haiti, I think, already once, and he's stated that he wants to support Latin America. So I'm hoping that that's, accurate, and that they continue to follow through, and maybe where people are lagging, we can pick up the slack. I just don't know if it's going to happen or not. Like I said, it's very hard to predict what's going on in the future. We're in a very tumultuous and unpredictable political climate right now. You go to the next one. Threat assessment, from what I've got, and we'll go through the gangs first. They're highly mobile. They know the area. They live in the areas that they're trying to maintain. They can blend in. They have the support of a lot of people there, because they are doing things like a lot of organizations do, providing protection for schools, and providing some resources and humanitarian aid. Even though most people don't like them, they're the only choice. They're the only ones there. And then there's also, of course, the I will kill you if you don't help us. And so they have a lot of resources in the areas that they're at. They have that territory locked down. And so it's very difficult for anybody coming in from the outside to do operations tactically. They're decentralized, so there's a lot of gangs, like 200 gangs in Haiti. Um, some of them have created things like the G9, and have decided, well, we have a common goal. We want to keep our territories. Let's work together on some things, but you're not taking my gang. We're not merging, but they're decentralized. It's almost like a franchise. And you've seen this a lot in other countries too. It's very similar to Mexico. Mexico runs like a franchise. You have the cartel. They're distributing and ensuring that product goes out and they're taking a cut of the profit, and then it goes to the drug trafficking organizations and they do their thing, and goes down to the plaza bosses and they do their thing. Everybody gets their cut, and then if you remove the head of the snake, it doesn't matter because somebody's right there to step in and keep going there. They can keep operating without that centralized command structure, and so that makes it very difficult. You can go after Jimmy Barbecue and remove him. Somebody the next day will step in and take his place. Better or worse, we don't know. So it's very difficult to disrupt those types of organizations. They're very dug in, and that's how they've been able to take over so much of the territory. Their intent is to maintain their territorial control, grow it a bit as well, their revenue streams, and then local governance functions. We control the roads. You pay taxes to us. They're a pseudo form of government that probably takes in more revenue than the actual government is. And so, like I said, it makes it difficult, and they are definitely exploiting state weakness. The people I talk to down there often just view the P&H as another gang, unfortunately. That's based off corruption, and essentially, I mean, I knew a time down there where the guys didn't get paid for like 7-8 months. It's like, okay, you don't pay me for 7-8 months, I'm gonna have to go do something to get my finances bolstered here. The tactics they're using still continue to be ambushes on the road, controlled checkpoints where they're stopping, extorting, robbing, charging fees, quote unquote. And then of course, targeted kidnappings are huge. They figured out the code, which was going for the middle class and doing volume. It's much easier. You don't have to invest in the overhead of holding somebody for a long period of time, a VIP, so to speak. For those situations can take months to years. With the middle class, it's a couple $1,000s. A middle class person in Haiti can figure out a way to scrounge that money, and they do pay. And it's happened multiple times to the same people sometimes. And it's just a quick turnaround. And they, like I said, they do volume, and they have a large revenue stream from that kidnapping. And then the scorched earth stuff we've been seeing, the burning of villages and murder of people en masse, is disturbing, but it's a way that they exercise their control. So that's the gangs in a nutshell. They all have different tactics they use based off of where they're at, what resources are available, who they're targeting. But essentially, those are the things that they are doing. You can go to the next slide. The MSS and HMP, they do have professional policing. A lot of the Kenyans were trained by our special forces. We've been training them for years to deal with Al-Shabaab in Somalia and working with the African Union. So they have a lot of good training, and a lot of them are highly professional. At the same time, they're good enough, but they're still not at the standard that we would like to see when it comes to conducting these kinds of operations. They have access to international logistics and intelligence support through partners. A lot of people talk about security and they gloss over the intelligence side of things. The one thing that these Kenyans do have is access to good intelligence, which is extremely important to conducting security operations on the ground. It's not a matter of just having bodies going around and slapping cuffs on people. It's understanding how to target the organizations, who to target, how they're set up, and then really being effective instead of just casting a wide net and hoping you catch some bad guys. So they do have access to that. They have logistical support. They can't have somebody can fly in, military flights can still come in with with the support if they need it. They're not locked down like everybody else is out of the Port-au-Prince airport. But it's still difficult to move those resources. And then, but the force density, they don't have enough people. That's it. They don't have enough people. They don't have resources to actually be effective. And anybody who's done any kind of operations, stability operations, military operations can see that. And it's just going to continue to lag behind. It's like a slow drag down to the bottom until they actually get the resources they need that they assessed that they needed in the first place. They are constrained. They have to do things by Haitian law. They have rules that they need to follow, which is a good thing. Standard operating procedures, rules of war. They're restricted in operating. They're restricted in their operating resources when it comes to money. Like I said, the reason they're not switching out and continuing to supplement, I think, is because of the ambiguity around the money. They need to know if that pay is gonna continue coming in, if it's worth the risk. And then political sensitivities based off of previous operations with the UN and US military forces in Haiti. There's a lot of ways that could go wrong where the people could turn against, of course, the MSS. And we have seen some human rights violations on that. Personally, I've seen videos of it, and it's not good. However, realistic expectations, there will always be those kinds of incidents that happen. It's a difficult situation, no excuses around it, but you will see them happen. Next slide, please. What I believe, and I'm kind of going through this fast, I want to leave a little bit of time for Q&A, but what I believe the next 6 to 12 months look like is that they'll still continue, MSS will continue to achieve some tactical clearances like corridors and hubs, but at a nationwide, there's no nationwide stabilization or rebuilding without the actual resources they need. The gangs will adapt to the rural routes once they figure out, because it's difficult without the resources. You can secure a route, all right. The gangs are going to adapt to what you're doing, and they're going to start trying to disrupt that route. Then you're going to have to figure out a secondary, and there's only a few routes that really work well, corridors in Haiti. So it really limits things, and it makes it easier for the gangs to disrupt those corridors. That's why you need enough resources to really keep them at bay 100%, which, by the way, would not be difficult to do. The gangs seem scary, but I've seen their tactics, and I've operated and I've seen them personally face to face and the way they do things. They're not professional militiamen, or they're gangs. Most of them are on drugs and high when they're doing things, and makes them dangerous and unpredictable. But going up against an actual tactical professional force, that a legitimate force, they would have a difficult time. They would probably run and dig in and go underground. They're terrified of the possibility of U.S. military forces on the ground. I know that much. But that's kind of what I see happening in the next few months. I don't personally think it's going to get better. I do think it'll get a little bit worse before it gets better. But there is the possibility, if they actually provide the resources, of it getting a little more stable. The upside of things, rapid infusion of forces, donor funding, if that all happens, we could see a recovery of some services and allowance of humanitarian aid to reach people where they are in those corridors. It wouldn't be, of course, getting to everybody where they're at, which would be great, but it might alleviate some of the emergency crisis situations with refugees who are displaced. The downside, they're unable to hold cleared areas, and then the gangs just re-entrench. Rival militias and vigilante actors proliferate, and then humanitarian catastrophe deepens and regional destabilization increases. It's more likely that that's going to happen than the positive side at this point. That could change, tomorrow if they decide to actually do what is necessary to stabilize and provide security for the region. Next slide, please. The operational implications for stakeholders, for you all. There's going to be a continued kidnapping risk. I haven't been down there in a year, mostly because I don't want to make my partners and friends down there targets. I try and do everything I can to stay out of Haiti for that reason. And I've been lucky to have really good networks set up to where if I say I need to do something, I can reach out to somebody down there to do it. I think that's the best way sometimes, especially when you're at this level. But the risk to your partners, of course, is greater even. If you have people that are working with you and everybody knows that they work with you, that means that they know they have access to more funds than most. And it doesn't matter if they have the money in their wallet or not. They may become targeted to get a quick ransom paid. So you need to remember that's in the forefront of your mind when you're operating with your partners too, that they're at constant risk. Supply chain disruption is going to continue on, of course, unless they do. We had been talking about that same port down the Jacmel area, and I can't remember the name of it. But there's so many areas that they could develop pretty quickly to act as least as temporary ports to bring in supplies and be able to get them to where they need to go. You got Cap Haitians open for the north down, essentially almost a whole coastline around Jacmel and that area up to Ansapit along the border is fairly secure and it's accessible by water. So I think that they need to do something about the supply chain risk. If they keep just trying to fly into Port-au-Prince, that's where they're going to have the least amount of control and be able to move things. It just costs a lot of money to do that too. That's very high risk. Heightened risk of mission creep and politicized withdrawals. So that's kind of going back to the stakeholders who are supporting and the change in regimes and things like that. Kenya deciding, hey, this isn't worth it for us. We're pulling our people out. And that is something that's a metric you need to pay really close attention to as you're doing operations. Okay, if the MSF pulls out, there's going to be a huge influx of criminal activity and people scrambling to take more territory. So it's a metric you really should pay attention to, which means, collaborating with people in the government, other NGOs that are connected and actually have an understanding of the operations of what are going on. So you need to be prepared to shift quickly. And you can plan all you want. Even with the Kenyans planning this out and the MSS planning this out, I don't fault them for the way it's gone. You have to be very agile in this kind of an atmosphere. It is a war zone, essentially. And so you have to be able to change quickly and have plans in place, contingencies that you can flip on real quick that will work, that you've tested out. I've done a couple of the last evacuations, and it was amazing how many organizations had no plan in place for evacuation. I think the last quote I got for a flight out for a group was $5 million because of that reason. People didn't have plans in place. So the providers could come in and start gouging and raising their prices based off the demand. So you have to have plans in place. Can you go to the next slide? And we can talk about all this. I'm sure there'll be questions. Recommendations for you all is to define conservative operational boundaries. That means not taking a ton of risks, unnecessary risk, being really well thought out in where you operate, how you operate, saying no sometimes because it's not worth the risk, not telling yourself to not look at something and think about it because it's too scary to think about the consequences of it. You just need to be careful how you operate. It's still feasible. I will tell people, I'll help you every day of the week operate in Haiti, as long as you're being realistic with your planning and understanding the amount of risk that you're taking. Red teaming, contingency planning, put together a plan and bring in somebody that disagrees with you to shoot holes in it. Somebody that you don't always agree with. Don't have a bunch of yes people sitting around the table saying, oh yeah, that's a great plan. All right, you want somebody to disagree with you and say, no, that's not a good idea. Maybe try this. You want, diversity of thought when it comes to that. So, but red team it, say, okay, this is what happens if we, if everything goes bad and the MSS pulls out and we need to close up shop really quick, what are our plans to do that? What are our evacuation routes? what could potentially happen to those routes, and then what are our secondary plans and contingencies. But have good plans that are actually realistic, and bring in somebody from the outside to look at it. Don't have your employees reading through your plans as the boss and saying, "Yeah, boss, they're great." Next slide, please. Diversify your logistics and supply chains. We've come up with some pretty creative ways to get things across from the Dominican Republic. I've gone and driven and taken boats on those different routes myself to make sure they're good, to make sure we're in compliance with the law and doing things legally, to understand the intricacies of navigating, across borders if we need to, what paperwork we need, developing relationships with people across borders so that we don't have problems when it comes to that. But you should have a few different ways to get things in and out of the country, and then planning ahead to, if you have to go a long period without supplies. First off, you don't want to stockpile everything in one location. That's just a big diamond, waiting. Somebody's going to see it and they're going to want to take something. So you want to make sure you have enough to take care of yourself, but not too much to draw attention. But definitely diversify your supply chains. Engage legally and politically. If you're there long term, engage with your government representatives. Talk to the State Department if you're from the U.S. down there, and talk to their regional security officer if you can. Whenever I go to a foreign country that I'm working in, I take time to go to lunch with somebody or eat lunch at their dining facility there. Just have a conversation so they know I'm there and that we're supporting them, and we hope that they'll support us if something goes wrong. And typically those conversations result in some big piece of information that I need to continue planning and operating safely. And so, and then that goes to, a lot of NGOs work hand in hand with, different governments. Make sure you're developing those relationships so you can get early warning and know if something's coming so you can plan ahead. Go to the next slide, please. If you're supporting population-facing programs, it might be a good idea to collaborate with others to strengthen numbers. And if there's only a few corridors that are going to be secure over the next few months, you're probably going to have to do that anyway. But work together. That way you're bringing a couple of different trains, thoughts. The worst thing is when people start making decisions in vacuums. A lot of organizations do that too. They stop talking with the other organizations, or somebody's telling them, hey, this is going to happen, and they don't want to hear it because it derails the mission that they're on. So they put on blinders and just isolate. Make sure you're working together if you can. Like I said, there's strength in numbers, and there's no reason why. We did that for years in multiple countries. You got governments working side by side with NGOs and humanitarian organizations, even faith-based groups. But it's something to consider. The next slide. The bottom line is MSS is buying time for the Haitians. There has to be a better solution coming. This one's not working, and it's likely not going to work, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions. It's not a silver bullet. Without a credible plan that combines adequate force density, logistics, legal processes, institutional rebuilding, and predictable funding, the gains will be transient and the humanitarian and political toll will worsen. So prepare for volatility, plan conservatively, and insist on specific measurable transition milestones before assuming anything resembling normalized security. And if you go to the next slide, I think that was my last one. Before we go to the questions, I wanted to piggyback off of the last question. This is something I've been passionate about integrating security into private security. I go down quite often and work with private security teams that are on hospital campuses or on orphanages or schools, and they're always just super eager to learn. Every time I go down, I end up doing an impromptu training session for what ends up being 8 hours with these people, and they're very hungry to learn because they know they're in a dangerous situation. It's not like they're guarding the mall, right? They're under threat of death every day, and they don't know what to do. They're limited by the government on what type of weaponry they can have. There's no way they can match, the gangs down there. They're limited on how they can operate, and then it makes it not worth it a lot of times for them. So when something does happen, campus gets overrun, the security scatters. We had very good success with our security teams. We trained with them. We made sure that they were being switched out often. They would only work on site for 3 or 4 weeks at a time. They would switch out with another team. We had 12, so we had 6 up, 6 down. They were well armed. We made sure their weapons were being cleaned for them. The first time I went there to assess a security team, the guy's shotgun was so rusted, all the shells in the tube had rusted together. If he had tried to fire it, it probably would have blown up in his hands. Um, but if you take care of them and give them the proper tools, every single developing nation in the world, including our own, integrates security with government law enforcement resources. That's how you maintain a secure posture that's good enough to prosper in. But you can't, police cannot do it by themselves. The military cannot do it by themselves ever. It doesn't work in any developed nation around the world. It doesn't make sense for it not to be looked at as a resource in Haiti. Everywhere I go, everybody has security guards. They're all armed. They're all watching. They live in those areas. Their families are in those areas. And most of them they want to learn more. They want more training. I brought this up to somebody in the Canadian government. I got put into a meeting by chance, and I remember saying, "What have you guys thought about, providing some of the training? Like you're using all this training for the law enforcement there. Have you thought about setting aside some of that training for the civilian population that has no training to be security guards? They don't even know how to use the weapons they have. It's more dangerous than anything." And that individual who was higher up in the government said, "We've never even thought about that." And that comes from a mindset, a lot of people, either if they work for the government, I do not, I'm a third party consultant. I'm going to be as honest with you all as I possibly can. If they're working for the government or getting government grants funding, and typically their focus is on government pushing government resources to fix the problem. But in reality, the only way it ever gets fixed is by providing security to the entire country, good security that's long lasting. And the only way they're ever going to be able to do that, it's not going to be through government resources. There's not enough ever to do that. You have to bring in commercial organizations already paying these people to do the security. The government doesn't even have to pay them, but they're there, and you need to make it worthwhile for them um, to have a posture that first off deters the gangs from trying to take over those facilities. And if you're doing it one facility at a time, it can be a regional thing. These security teams, a lot of security teams are the same company providing security for an entire, area, a block, or a neighborhood. But if you can deter some of the activity because somebody has the right posture, if they're willing to, fight back, which is horrible to think about, but they are in a war zone. Most of these individuals doing security have already thought about that and are willing to. And so I think in the future going forward, I'm hoping that people will start looking at that. But I've been kind of poo-pooed on that quite a few times from people who are more on the government side of things. But everybody I've talked to on the NGO or faith-based or humanitarian side, they are kind of like, we need this. How can we go about doing this? And the cost is really the factor that keeps people from being able to do it on a large scale. We've done a lot of pro bono work with our teams. But it'd be cool to see if there would be the possibility of having grants that could be provided for training for security personnel in Haiti. So when I'm sorry, I can't remember the individual's name who brought that up. I think that's absolutely the right mindset. It's got to be a collaborative effort. Just using government resources is not working, has not worked for the last 20 years. We need to think outside the box and start bringing more people together on that. Just wanted to address that. I know it had already been brought up, but that's all I have. I'm open to questions at this point.
I wanted to ask about, I'm Iva Presbury, with Hope for Privy Kids Inc. in Jefferson City, Missouri. Early on, you used an example, and I'm not sure if it was just, anyway, the example was about just not being blocked with getting money into Haiti. And the option would be to just put it out the window. I know that was just for fun. But my husband and I have been working with Haiti for 26 years now. And we've not had problem getting money in. I've always been afraid, just like you mentioned, afraid for the security of the people that we send the money to. But at the same time, we've never failed to be able to get money from our bank to their bank or from Western Union to them. And I've been concerned about that. Even this summer, we've sent money in for their school supplies for this fall coming in, which is a large sum of money. And we've never failed to be able to get it. I was very concerned because we work at the top of the mountain up from Jacmel. It's about it's 31 miles up, 30 some miles up, but a 4-hour trip with 31 miles with the very top of the mountain. And I was concerned early on about getting money to our director because of where they live. I mean, these people literally live in tents and things up there that they've constructed. But he had a bank in Jacmel.
Yep.
So we could send from our bank to Jacmel, and he's never failed to get the money for anything we need to do. And even this summer, we have a construction project going on. So I was just checking on that.
No, it's great. It depends on the area. I think it was during times where, first off, the populated areas, the banks would only have a certain amount of money available, and they would run out of cash. And so in some of the more populated areas where there's a lot of people going to the banks, withdraw, and they were only getting a certain amount of cash because they still have to move the cash between banks, right? And it was very difficult to move cash in the trucks and different things like that to the banks. So that was during a time, and it was just like we couldn't get them water, we couldn't get them food, and but they could buy it locally. So we couldn't have it sent up from Port-au-Prince like we had been doing. But they could buy it locally, so they needed cash, and they couldn't get cash at that point. So it was just one example. We didn't do that very often. They got it. It's not illegal, by the way, because you're moving it within the country. But it was just one of those creative ways that we had to figure out how to do things, and that's a lot of what you have to do in Haiti is just think outside the box and get creative and try new things. But understand also that there's a precedent typically in these types of situations. You can look at other countries and see what they've had to do in the past and kind of predict what's going to happen in the future. But yeah, it was a very creative way. Never want to have to do it again.
Hi, this is Gary Welker with St. Paul's School in Torbec. Have you seen any movement from Port-au-Prince, any movement of the gangs from Port-au-Prince out into the countryside? And do you foresee that happening in the future?
We have there's a lot of it's not necessarily just in Port-au-Prince, but we've noticed like Kana gang and people, Jeff up there and those gangs trying to move into territories that are close by, just trying to expand their control. And that's typically what you've seen with these other organizations too. They're not going from, the south end of Port-au-Prince to the north and then trying to expand their territory. It's just where they're at, they're trying to grow out. But there are gangs outside of Port-au-Prince still that operate and want to grab more territory. So you can expect that is likely to happen, and especially in the areas that are just being protected by the locals, right? The gangs are like, well, you're just some local ragtag group. We're going to take over. We can do better than you. And so we've seen that a lot, especially up like St. Mark, that area. We've seen quite a few times where they've tried to take over an area, but they've been pushed back by the local defense groups that are there. So.
Hi, I'm Betsy Wickstrom with the Global Birthing Home Foundation and also St. Paul's Church and School. My question is, with them building up the airport in Lakai, my concern is that's going to be a beacon for the gangs. What do you think about that?
Yeah, always. Anytime that you find a way around, or you find a way to take control from the gang, take back control from the gang, it's going to cause somebody to want to disrupt that and take it back. They're going to want to exploit it, and it's just a matter of we need money. And so, especially in a country that's just kind of circling the drain right now, excuse me, financially. Anytime there's something out there that's operating well, I've had to move a lot of companies for people to different areas because they were doing well, and somebody saw that and they decided to take advantage of it. So you have to be careful. It's not a matter of like the building out a new airport or something like that. It's the way they do it in accepting the reality of the situation, having good security around it, and things like that first. But a lot of times people are putting the cart before the horse. They're building the airport without thinking about the security. You know, they're building a school without thinking about security, or digging a well without thinking about security. You have to have security first, or nothing will work ever. It's just a fact of the world, the way it is, even in our own developing nations. But it should be done still. We need multiple resources for that.
Peter, this is Janice.
Hi.
I do have a very personal question for you.
Oh.
My family and our very small church has been serving up until 2018 with a little orphanage in Bercy called Cabaret Children's Mission.
Okay.
And I know they evacuated their orphanage up north. Was that the one you were
Yeah,
talking
well,
about?
there was a couple. We did one first, was Life Song, and then I remember I got a call for another one, and we facilitated that one. They got airlifted out. We got the Haitian government to pay for it. I don't know how that happened, but it did. So, but there was a couple during that time period where I can't remember which gang was coming in, but they were threatening. They came in, they did take some stuff, but then they left it alone. But yeah, we facilitated quite a few. But I always tell people it's also a reason for like a lot of these organizations. Well, we need to go down there to do something. I do most of my work best from behind my desk with a phone because I'm outside of the situation. I can coordinate things better because I have a good network on the ground. If I go down there, it just my threat level my risk level goes up, and it's hard to communicate. I don't have access to things I need, but we were able to coordinate. It was like 450 kids getting out of that area up to safety and Cap Haitian with no injuries or anything. And I think that's something to think about too as you're going forward with your operations is, do I need to be there, or can my local partners handle this? But yeah, we did work. I think we did work with them.
Thank you. It's nice to know some of the kids I built relationships with are really safe. So thank you so much.
Just help me encourage them to stay up there for now. It's like, when can we go back? Not now. Just don't go back. You're good where you're at.
But I do any other questions for Peter?
I have a question. Hi, Peter. This is Louise Lindemeyer, Hispaniola Health Partners. You say that Marco Rubio is kind of a friend to the Caribbean, but with all of the threatened deportations, particularly of people that were legally here on the Biden program, and I don't know, maybe you're not qualified to answer this, but if they have to fly back to Haiti, and the only place they can really go from the U.S. is to Cape Haitian, how can they say that the security situation has improved, and so these people are, free to leave, and that it's no longer threatening? Do you have any?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm qualified, but I worked in the military. I was an advisor to Customs Border Protection and Border Patrol in Tucson sector. So I've worked a lot with immigration and customs enforcement, understanding the situation. I know with certain people that put the target on my back, I don't know why, but my job down there was to stop cartels from trafficking people and drugs into the country. What I saw a lot of was it was, first off, there's a lot of there's a balance here. There are a lot of people who have legitimate refugee or asylum claims that I've helped people from Uzbekistan and from different countries all over the world get legitimate asylum in the United States. There are also legitimate asylum claims coming out of Haiti for sure, and there's a need for their place to be a place to go. I think the problem is that everybody should have been focused on the immigration thing about 10, 15 years ago, because it's been the same way for many years. And people get, trafficked and exploited often coming across the border. I saw a lot of that. So I think right now what they're trying to do is, okay, we're in a horrible situation right now that was perpetuated by both Republican and Democrat leadership over the years. And there's no real good solution. And so they're deporting people instead of, and I do know that they're going through, I've had quite a few of my Haitian friends who've done that, and they're not all getting deported. But there is going to be an influx. And I don't think that's Marco Rubio's call on everything. I think he's appointed, right? And he's fulfilling whatever. And it's going to be like that. The next president is going to do the exact same thing. So we need to figure out solutions for Haiti, where Haitians can live in their country. And it's not, there's no magic wand to wave over everything. And there's no one individual to blame for all this. It's happened over the last, how long have you guys been working in Haiti? Like 20 years?
Since after the earthquake.
And not just you, it's like everybody.
I'm curious about what is the transportation corridor for people that are getting deported, even though they were legal in the U.S., but because of change of administration and policy and so forth. I mean, can they safely? Our people are from the Ancapit or the Sud-Est, so that's a long way from Cape Haitian, and you have to go through a lot of threatening territory to get there. I just wonder whether the State Department thinks about that, or the Homeland Security, when they say that it's safe to go back to these places.
Well, I think they say it's
the
safe.
Biden
It's definitely
program.
not safe to go back to it's not safe to go back to Venezuela or El Salvador, some of these other places either that they're deporting people to. So I don't think it's a matter of safety. I think that and I don't know if as far as I know, and I do work with DHS and ICE and some of these people sometimes, they're deporting people that came in and either overstayed their visa. That's where State Department comes in, right? If you overstay your visa, then it gets canceled and you have to go home. If it's a legitimate asylum claim, then it should be looked at. The problem with Biden administration is they weren't going through the process properly to do that. And they were releasing people on their own recognizance to come back, and they weren't coming back. Like I said,
I think you might not know the parole program, the Biden parole program that was 2-year visa with work papers. And that's what I'm talking about. That then has been truncated.
Okay. Maybe I don't. So maybe I'm not qualified to answer the question for you. But all I know is what I want to put across is I hope, and my hope is that Marco Rubio, I think that's what I said, is going to be more friendly toward the area than the last organization, because the last organization did not help the area. They still haven't helped the area. It's gotten worse and worse and worse. Maybe by letting people go as refugees to the United States, that helps us, some people, but it's like Bill was saying, it's brain drain too. It's a lot of people, the best people leaving, and then you leave a huge vacuum in the country. And so it's like, I don't really, I do care about my country and what's going on in it. When I'm focused on Haiti and how Haiti can be rebuilt and support themselves without our help for once. And so
as far as brain drain, some of these people were working for us, were professional people, and getting deported early, even though they're legal, then puts them in danger of
I'm a third party consultant. I've tried to talk to our government quite a few times about this. I do make my voice heard. I recommend that you write Marco Rubio or write your congressman and talk to them and say, hey, look, I work down here. I'd like to speak to somebody. They talk to me all the time. If you ask and you have access and you might be able to talk to whoever your state rep is and get some better, a feeling of what's going on. But I do think that there's so much going on domestically right now that they're not as focused on Haiti as they should be, or as we wish they were. But I do hope, and I'm praying that actually does happen, because I do believe I'm a man of faith. Sorry, I believe God can soften hearts tomorrow if He wants. So we'll see what happens. Anybody else
thank
have
you
any
very much.
questions?
Thank you, very much, and I will, second what you said, Peter. I know almost everybody in this room has probably contacted your representatives, but more than once, just hound them to death if you can to make it, but, thank you, Peter, for your
Yeah.
time. Can we all, so we're gonna make a little deviation from our schedule, and I am going to introduce Jamila Joseph, who has been wonderful in helping me this year, with the planning and, just kind of talk about what's the future of the Kansas City Haiti Symposium.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. As Janice said, my name is Jemima Joseph. I started coming to the Kansas City Symposium 2018, 2019. I remember it was the session where the KU chair was at that one, African American and Haitian Studies program, and I really loved it and loved the energy in the room and how it was very collaborative and just the relevancy of the topics that were discussed. I had learned about the symposium through a coworker who has connections with the Duranis who have stepped out. I know most of you, I've seen most of you here and we've talked some, but I think like it'd be good for us to contextualize how the symposium has been going over the years. I have a couple, a lot of you know Janice, obviously, over the years, but I'd love to ask for some questions so you guys can also see how the symposium has been over the years and what next steps looks like. So with that, tell us about how you began the symposium and what role you played.
So our church had been going to an orphanage in Bercy since 2002. And I have two daughters and they were very much involved in Haiti. One went and lived in Port-au-Prince and helped out with an infant rescue for about a year. The other one was in the process of adopting a little boy from Haiti. And our mission team had been in Haiti and we returned the day before the earthquake. But both of my girls remained. And so thank goodness to God, they all both survived. And I got my first grandchild a couple weeks later through humanitarian parole. So, but all these people that knew me kept coming up to me and saying, well, do you know this organization? Do you know that organization? Well, what about this organization? I'm like, well, there's thousands of NGOs. I don't know them all. But then I got to thinking, well, there's a lot of us in the Kansas City regional area that are working in Haiti, but we're not talking to each other. We're not trying to collaborate with each other. We weren't learning, we were repeating some of the same mistakes over and over because we didn't know how other people had resolved them. So I decided to do the first Haiti Symposium in 2013. We started out at Rockhurst. We moved to Polsonelli law firm for a while, and now we're here thanks to Dr. Ted at Village Presbyterian. So, I wanted us to be able to gather, to talk, to learn from each other. That's why we have speakers each time. Address concerns you have. So on your survey, please put what topics you want to hear about. And I didn't want it to be focused on healthcare or education. I wanted this symposium to have a broad representation and to provide value for everybody that had a heart for Haiti.
Awesome. And my next question was, tell us about some of the topics that you've enjoyed that has been covered, good memories that you've had.
So we've had amazing symposiums. I remember, and to add to the fact that I think it's a successful opportunity. Early on, when Heart to Heart was still very much involved in Haiti, collaborations came from the symposium with a couple organizations to work in Haiti. I know we've had speakers that have talked about how do we get goods in there? And it has been able to give you participants contacts and ways to collaborate together to do things. And so that's my whole goal. There's been wonderful. Last year's was really good, maybe one of my favorite. But we have covered everything from education to business growth. But the last few years, it's been very focused on how do we operate as NGOs in Haiti. So the topics have changed over the years because the environment has changed. But those are my favorites.
Cool. This year, every year that Janice does this, there's that question at the end of the symposium that says, would you like to join on the planning team? And I've been interested in doing it the last couple of years, but never did. And this was my first year doing it, and I got to see a lot of the behind the scenes work. I can attest and witness that it's more than one person's job. And Janice has been doing that since it started. So I want to talk more about that.
And to be honest, when I first started, I had 3 or 4 volunteers, but you know, further away you got from the earthquake, the less interest people had. But those of you who are here today are committed. I do have a group of 4 or 5 people that I reach out to, and they help me find the speakers, and this wouldn't happen without them. But for the past few years, it has been a one-man show outside of finding the speakers. And so, you know, it means making sure I have a place secured, food secured, sponsorships secured, speakers secured. Just the general logistics, post symposium. We try to get everything loaded up on YouTube so that you can refer your friends to this opportunity. Several years ago, I think before 2018, I created a website for this group to basically reflect resources for work in Haiti, like, you know, who are the different hotels or transportation resources. Since I've been doing this all by myself, I cannot maintain that website. And the website, you know, those are all obsolete because of the situation there. There is still some resources on people who want to get interested in Haiti, get books and videos to watch. But yeah, it's been, I don't know if I covered everything that we do, but yeah. But yeah.
So this is our transition to say that we're looking for more help in putting this symposium together. As Janice has talked about, there's a lot of good conversations that have happened over the years. There's also more conversations to happen, and it's just this environment has fluctuated with how things are happening in Haiti as well as in your personal lives. But we would love for this to continue. We would love for it to not just stay, but also to grow. The planning was about started in February. So February to September is about 6-7 months. Very, very part-time, unless you have a very full-time job, then it becomes a lot, but you know, many hands make light work. If you are interested, we'd love to have you. Everything is learnable. And we would love to see what the future of the Kansas City Symposium looks like as Janice thinks about phasing out. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to give her a. So yeah, just see either one of us or answer on your survey, because we are definitely looking, you know, I've kind of retired, so I'm kind of looking at what I want to focus on in life. So I appreciate that. This is very important, I believe. I truly believe. So We want it to continue to grow and continue. So the next thing, I'm gonna make a little, fly by the night change in the agenda. I'm gonna give us a 10-minute break to grab your food, come back to your tables, and then we'll start the round tables, okay? Thank you.